Well, good evening and welcome to Wide Awake News. You're watching the Alternative Energy Hour. This is the first hour of the Monday program. And tonight I had lined up Sterling Allan of PESN.com to be my guest for the evening. And for whatever reason, I'm not sure if perhaps Sterling's had technical difficulties or what, but for whatever reason, it looks like I'm going to be sitting here talking to myself tonight. Sterling's not picking up the phone. So, these things happen in live broadcasting. So, that being the case, we're going to move on to Plan B. For any of you who have done live broadcasting, where to make a show come off properly, everything has to fall exactly into place, you'll have some empathy for my situation. For those of you who believe that, this is ABC or CNN, and that, we've got a big budget behind us, and that, there's a bunch of guys running around with whips and chains beating everybody into submission to make sure that everything goes smoothly, guess again. Needless to say, in the alternative energy news for right now, one of the most interesting stories that's come up recently is a wild rumor that I heard about 2 weeks ago, that one of the fellows who's kind of a basement backyard inventor type, actually this guy's actually got credentials. He's from academia. He's published a number of very academic papers on this phenomena that's loosely referred to as cold fusion. Cold fusion got a little bit of press back in the 80s. A couple of fellows named Fleischman and Pons kind of got pressured into announcing before they were ready. And, it looked promising, and there was, a lot of hype and a lot of speculation. And then other academic operations tried to replicate their work, couldn't do it. So, the idea of cold fusion kind of fell into disrepute. Then, recently, some folks, notably one guy got a heck of a lot of press, a guy by the name of Rossi out of Italy. He got a whole lot of press indicating that not only had he perfected a method of cold fusion, he was actually ready to bring a device to market. Okay, all of a sudden it's getting real. A guy like me can look forward to maybe going down to Walmart, finding one on an end cap, laying down my credit card, bringing it home, putting it to work, right? Sounds like a great deal. Well, as a couple of years have gone by, Rossi has apparently placed a couple of very large systems. We're talking systems that produce energy in the range of a megawatt or more. These things fit into a large Connex box. Not the type of thing that would fit on an end cap at Walmart, but apparently he's placed a couple of these gizmos, and early reports are that they're operating pretty much as Rossi has claimed. But still, the idea of a cold fusion type device that would be attractive and of significant interest to an average guy seems kind of out of reach. Not really sure. We're just, there's no indication when such a thing might be available in the marketplace for average folks like us to take advantage of. Well, then I got this interesting email about a guy by the name of Cravens. Dennis Cravens is the guy's name, who apparently has had some preliminary success with a cobbled together cold fusion gizmo, kind of an experimental thing. Initial indications were promising, and he published a number of papers on this thing, and folks looked at it and looked kind of cross-eyed, and he just didn't seem to get any interest. Nobody stood up and saluted. He didn't seem to be getting the kind of response on it that he thought was appropriate. So apparently he got a bright idea. Well, let's go ahead and fit this thing into an automobile and see if I can make basically an electric car that will recharge its batteries using a steam engine that's powered by my little cold fusion device. Interesting idea. Now, to be honest with you, the car that he's talking about is it's a Model A Ford classic car, and the original Model A Ford was powered by a 24 horsepower engine. A Model A Ford is a fairly light, fairly simplistic vehicle that could probably be propelled by as little as a couple of horsepower. So he made a good choice in that respect. But by today's standards, comparing what he's putting together to a modern automobile like many of you are accustomed to, it's kind of like comparing a car to a fancy golf cart. But if this guy could demonstrate such a practical application of cold fusion, what people are calling cold fusion, I think a lot of people would find that inspirational. They would consider that something that was noteworthy, something that was applicable to average Joe's daily life, and might even get some automobile manufacturers interested in putting something like that together. Needless to say, if you're losing hope on alternative energy, don't, because there are guys who are working on it. Now, this guy Cravens, I'm trying to get him to do my show. I thought that would be a really cool project to feature on my show, and he's kind of backed off right now because I think he's a little intimidated at the thought of showing what he's got so early. He thinks it might be a little premature, but that's okay. He has started a crowdfunding type thing. He's trying to get some folks to help him out a little bit with some bucks, and hopefully we'll see something from that guy. That could be an inspirational message to deliver if we do get something positive from him in the near term. In any case, I'm going to right now see if I can. I just noticed that it looks like my guest for the evening might now be available. So I'm going to see if I can't arrange to get him in here. Making the call now. Needless to say, if you're interested in helping this guy Cravens out, go to Indiegogo, that's INDIEGOGO.com, and under projects, look up Fusion-Powered Car, Fusion-Powered-Car. It'd be very interesting to see, what kind of response we get from this fella. If let's see, we're about 10 seconds from the break, and it looks like I've got a caller, Hoover from Montana. Hoover, I'm going to ask that you hang loose with me until after this first break. Happy to take your call as soon as we get back from these blatantly commercial announcements. Please stand by. And we're back from that first break. Got a note just as I was getting ready to go out for that break. Got a note from the producer at Rents that there was a caller, a fellow by the name of Hoover from Montana. Brett, if that caller is still in the queue, happy to take him now.
Okay.
Are you there, sir?
Hello. Hi, Gary. Hi, Scarecrow.
Hey, nice to
Can you
talk
hear
to
me?
you. Yes, I can hear you just fine. You're
Okay.
coming in 5 by 5. What can I do for you tonight, sir?
Well, you're talking about cars that get good gas mileage or electrical cars.
Mm-hmm.
I had a friend, still do, and his father-in-law used to work for Ford in the 80s and 90s, and he anyway was at the house visiting in Michigan, and so the father-in-law took him to the plant that he worked at, and it was like on a Saturday or something, and there was like 4 trucks there, and there was and then all these high guys with fancy suits and stuff, quite a few of them, and they were looking at these trucks, and they were just sort of mingling with them, and they go, "Oh, what is with the truck?" And somebody goes, "Well, these trucks, they're electrical, but the thing is that what they do is they recharge themselves when they drive. Drive like the Prius now. If you step on the brake, it recharges the battery. Well, these things on all 4 wheels had some kind of electrical charger thing, and so if you're just going down the road, it's recharging the car, and so it was basically. I'm not sure if it could go on and on forever, but that was kind of what they were hinting at. That's what he was saying, and he was going, well, of course they didn't let it out.
I can tell you that Ford has manufactured some fleet trucks. They were doing this back as early as the 1980s, I believe, where they had electric hub motors driving them. They had a hub motor at each of the 4 wheels. And they did use regenerative braking, and they were electric trucks that ran used either a gasoline, diesel, or propane powered engine that drove a generator. And the idea was, for short haul deliveries in the city, they could run entirely off of battery power. They could run entirely off of electric. Would never even have to fire up their internal combustion.
Who was making these?
Ford was making them, and
oh yeah, it was a Ford company. That's what he was saying.
Yeah, and even more interesting than that, right across our southern border in Mexico, Volkswagen is right now today selling a full-sized pickup truck, what to an American would appear to be a full-sized pickup truck, something with the load carrying capacity, towing capacity, and size associated with like an F-150, something in that class of vehicle. This thing is powered by a turbocharged diesel engine, and on the highway achieves 35-40 miles to a gallon of fuel. Now, such high mileage vehicles have been rumored. They've also been real, honest to God vehicles that you could walk up, touch, and put hands on. But we have some issues here in the United States in that, for example, your current automobile, which of course runs on gasoline, has this handy dandy nifty device on it called a catalytic converter.
Right.
And what you're not being told straight out about is that you're basically a waste chemical byproduct reprocessing plant as you drive your automobile. Because what they do is they put minute quantities of PCBs and all sorts of other nasty chemicals that they can't figure out any other way to get rid of. They mix it into your gasoline, and you are paying to dispose of those toxic chemicals by the intense heat created in your catalytic converter, and they just can't get that job done with high mileage diesel cars.
They got a good thing going, the oil companies. But so anyway, I just wanted to let you know that he saw these things, and they they were telling him that the thing just basically, if you have a recharge, it'll just basically run forever until it breaks down.
Not forever.
It might. Well, it might.
They were good, but not that good.
Well, it might be a different vehicle than what you're told.
Well, it could be.
He was told that they weren't allowed to even manufacture them, and they actually kicked them out of the building.
Yeah, the ones I'm thinking of not only went into manufacture, but they were very popular with short haul delivery fleets, particularly in major urban environments where pollution and fuel availability is a problem. But most of them only had ranges of like 30 to 50 miles, so it would have to be a really short haul delivery type vehicle.
No, they were saying these things would run forever. That's basically what they were saying.
Well, I'll tell you, that would be a neat trick. That is certainly one that I'd like to see.
It's just the four wheels are regenerating electricity, and it's just a constant regeneration of electricity. That's basically all it was. So, well, thank you very much.
That's my pleasure. And as we move into this next break, let me go ahead and give the phone number out. It's 877-342-6673. Seeing as how Sterling's kind of stood me up this evening, we'll be happy to take callers, anybody who might be interested in discussing their alternative energy dreams, wishes, or desires. Give me a call. Let's see what happens. Take care, and we'll be back right after the break. Well, I'll tell you, it looks like my partner for the evening decided to make an appearance at the last minute, and I do now have a connection with Sterling Allan. And how you doing tonight, Sterling?
I'm doing all right. You have to forgive me. I was out delivering Girl Scout cookies, lost track of time.
Well, these things happen. There is a couple hours time spread between you and me. It's about 8:30 here on the East Coast. It's only about 6:30 your time, isn't it?
Yeah, sun just went down, got a little too cool, so we pedaled on back home, and then I saw your Skype message. Oh, shoot!
now, of course, if it had been me, I would have used some Southern language that has to do with bulls and excrement. But I realize that where you come from, such language is considered offensive. So we'll just press right on. In any case, Sterling, you had a considerable amount of material that was new and in the news when you were on my show this past Thursday, and I thought perhaps this audience might get a kick out of hearing some of that material that you covered for us on Thursday, because we are talking to a completely different audience here. The message that you delivered on Thursday, I'm sure, is new to them. So please, if you would, I'm going to go ahead and give you full screen, and for the listeners on Rinse and Oracle, this is Sterling Allan of PESN.com. He normally does a segment on my Thursday program called This Week in Free Energy, and this is basically a summation of all the news, what is the news, in the alternative energy segment. So Sterling, take it away.
Okay. We launched a new blog, pureenergyblog.com, and I really like the functionality of WordPress. It enables you to copy and paste things quite easily. So I was just kind of in the rhythm there, and I did 17 stories in 2 days. It's pretty cool stuff. This is just stuff that was in my inbox. I didn't have to go digging through the old trash heap to come up with this stuff. This was new, kind of a taste of what we could do if we were in that form all the time. Anyway, one of the first stories we did was, actually, this is in reverse chronological sequence, starting on February 28th. This is a compilation, again, I did for your show, as you mentioned, on Thursday. Dennis Cravens is crowdfunding a cold fusion car project. He made an elegant working Patterson power cell system that produced 400% excess power for 3 days during the International Cold Fusion Conference 5 in Monte Carlo. That was the first public demonstration of cold fusion. And now he wants to turn it into a car. So go check that out. Again, these links you can find over at pureenergyblog.com. And then I posted a link to the Evolve Expo conference that I went to a week ago, um, in Denver, Colorado. Did a kind of a run through showing the booths. There was 125 booths, kind of new agey, pretty cool stuff. But there was a new section this time. They had a free energy section, both in the booths as well as in the presentations. That's why I was there. They invited me to speak there. And there were about 3 or 4 booths with a Bedini motor, hydroxy fuel cell, water hammer effect system, and then there was a really interesting effect with 2 blocks that you run a wire through, just really momentarily, just basically run it across the battery, and it sets up a bond between those 2 metal blocks that is so strong that you can barely pull them apart. And with just a fraction of a second of electricity, that was pretty cool. And actually had the inventor of that effect show up at the booth. I wasn't there at the time, but this is the story. He walked up and said, what you got here? And they demonstrated, and he says, here, try and pull this apart. And he pulls one out of his pocket that was a fourth the size of what they had, and said, no, you try and pull this apart. And he came up to we had another booth for New Energy Systems Trust, and he introduced himself to me, and we got a group of about 10 people to go over to his house that evening, and he demonstrated all kinds of amazing, unusual effects. Some of them may be warmed over versions of what's already out there in mainstream science, but most of it seemed to have everyone scratching their heads going, now that is cool. You know, dropping, for example, a hockey puck sized thing, maybe a half the size of a hockey puck, onto and it looked like it was brass. And brass, of course, is not supposed to be metallic or not supposed to be magnetic in any way. And there was a block he dropped it on top of. Instead of dropping at free fall speed, the thing descended like it was on a shock absorber, and then it floated on top of the block and maybe a quarter inch above the block. That was pretty cool. And I was telling you about this string thing where he had a pot of salt water, not a pot, a cylindrical beaker of salt water with some kind of a metallic, like a bulb sticking out of the middle of it, and then dangling over the top of that, suspended from a metal rod, was maybe a, 2-foot length of string. And you would watch as the string would go dangling and would touch the metal and would shoot away about 6 inches, and then it would gradually come back toward the metal, maybe 45 seconds, it would hit it again, it would shoot away. And it just kept on doing that. There was no batteries connected to it. It was just sitting there, pulling energy from somewhere. And apparently, Gary, you're familiar with that effect, or at least a variation of that. You've seen that before?
Well, it was there was an effect shown. Oh my goodness, back when Europeans were still painting their faces blue and the Arabs ruled the earth. There was an Arabic inventor that came upon a gizmo where he had 2 pots of water, and they crossed and dripped into 2 pots below, and they created a static charge just from the movement of the water from the pots up above to the pots below. And the scenario you're talking about, I forget the name of the gizmo. I'd have to research it to come up with it, but it was a pretty cool device, particularly when you think, this is something that was being shown during the European Dark Ages. I mean, that's how old this was. And this sounds like a very related technology, and it is based on static electricity. It's formation of static electricity, and in a differential. You get an electric differential set up.
The thing about this one is there was no input moving parts. You didn't have dripping water, for example, which would convey the static.
The movement was caused by evaporation.
Yeah, in this case, you just have this pot of water, salt water, and this thing keeps circulating, cycling like that. And then if you go up and you touch it, he had one of the guys go up and touch that little metal ball, and he had such a shock that you could hear it around the room. And he jumped back and gave a little expletive out of his mouth, and that was quite the phenomena. Anyway, Jerry Smith showed us all kinds of cool stuff. I gave a brief little report on it as kind of a follow-up to the modified Leeds-Scanlon room temperature superconductor page that we had put up at PezWiki.
Yeah, but apparently this is the guy who's real shy about producing any videos. Apparently he doesn't want to produce any videos on something because, some of this stuff, even though, it may not be earth-shaking, it may not save the whales, may not feed the hungry, it's still some pretty cool stuff, I mean, it'd be interesting to see videos of.
I wouldn't be surprised if we couldn't talk him into doing a Science Channel series, and he'd probably be willing to do that after certain, forerunner things are done. There's some technologies he wants to get covered, and he actually spent 10 years and several $1 million developing that effect that we were talking about with running a little wire in between it, and with a 1/10 of a watt. He was able to get those things to adhere stronger than any magnet on Earth. And he actually had DARPA there at his house the week before we were there, talking to him about some of these technologies. He probably will not go with DARPA, but anyway, he was making buckyballs super cheap. That's ready to go.
All right, Sterling. Now, did you hear the music in the background, Sterling?
Yep.
Yeah, we got to take a break. Folks, please do stay tuned until after this break. We'll have more from Sterling Allan in our last segment of the Alternative Energy Hour coming up in just a moment. And we're back for our last segment of the Alternative Energy Hour for Monday, March 4th, 2013. My guest is Sterling Allan of PESN.com, and on his belated arrival, we're going to try in this last 12-minute segment to get out as many of the hot items that he's published recently on PESN.com as we possibly can. Sterling, I don't even want to steal another second from you. Let's pick it up where you left off and see how much of this material we can get out there before they drag us off the stage with the hook.
Okay, I've got my machine gun loaded and ready to fire.
You
first
take
of
it
all,
away, man.
Yildiz, Muammer Yildiz from Turkey, who has an all-magnet motor. He's had it for several years. A lot of people have gone to see it, and he is scheduled sometime soon to be doing a demonstration for a university to get this thing validated once and for all. Anyway, he was invited by the Turkish Patent Institute to the 41st International Exhibition of Inventions in Geneva, which is kind of the place to go if you've got something new. That's April 10th, and he submitted an application, or he submitted a 450-word explanation of his setup. He does plan on going to that, so that's pretty cool. I met a psychic at the conference there in Denver, and really accurate. It ran through several of the people that I know, and is like spot on. And it's actually a couple, and they did a reading on Muammer Yildiz, and they said he really has something, trying to create a new way to prove and validate what he has, to finally prove once and for all that it's for real. And the same psychics also did a reading on John Rohner, our guy with the Noble gas engine, supposedly. And they said that he claims to have had a working motor at one point, and their reading, as I did a follow-up with them later, was basically he's ascribing in his mind the motor that he worked on with Joseph Papp some 30 years ago as being the running engine that he had at one point. And he's had a lot of setbacks trying to get this thing replicated. He's got a lot of ego going on. Again, their reading was quite interesting, corroborated what a lot of us have concluded, that he's not the guy to take this thing to market, but he has inspired some people, and there may be some people who come along and take it the whole distance who don't have some of the blockages that he has. But they will need to modify some of the things that he has in his plans, because the design as he has it could be very dangerous as he's tinkering with it, doing the popper effect. The Kepi motor down in Brazil, We've been talking about that. Supposedly was running 137% efficient, validated by 2 labs in Europe. I got the word that after those tests, they went back to their data and how they took the data, and they revised the conclusions to under 100% efficient. And they gave the reasons for that. The KP Motor people kind of took that as academics going, we're too chicken to stick our necks out, and didn't really buy the explanation. But it made sense to me as to why they revised their numbers. But they do have some interesting phenomena there that I think could be skirting on the edges of over-unity. If you're in the region of 95 or above percent efficient, especially on a lower motor that typically only gets in the ballpark of 50%, then you're probably courting over-unity. Even though it's not over 100%, you have to overcome friction and losses. And so even in that ballpark, that's very interesting, deserves being looked at. Not to be confused with Keshi of Belgium. Kepi is over in Brazil. Their organization, they have people all over the world, but their headquarters is in Brazil. I was there a couple months ago. Kesh over in Belgium has pushed back his delivery date for generators to April. And I'll mention that we got a little reading on him too, and the reading on him was that he is the real deal. He really does have stuff. He does tend to exaggerate how far along he is, but he does have stuff.
Now, for the folks in the audience who have no idea who Keshi is, perhaps you could give a 10-second executive summary on what some of the claims are that have been made by Mr. Keshi.
Yeah, with Mr. Kesh, think of Star Wars or Star Trek. Anything you would need for a space mission, water, food, medicine, propulsion, and energy to power your stuff on board, he claims that his technology can provide all of those things. And he claims that he has given his technology to the Iranian government. That's why they were able to intercept those 2 drones 1 year apart in December of last year and the year before. And according to the psychics, that really did happen. So
interesting. So your psychic friends have indicated that he might actually be onto this. Now, needless to say, I don't know that I'm going to hold my breath waiting for my flying car and robot slave from this guy, but it's a hopeful message. In any case, what else? We're running out of time, man. We got about 5 minutes here. Holy cow!
The Mighty Engine.
This is a cool one. Tell me about Mighty Engine.
That's the massive yet tiny engine where something about the size of your alternator could power the engine. And he's getting closer to market, and there's a new book that's out that gives favorable mention of it. MagnaCoaster is another technology we mentioned. They're still working on their batch of 9 to 10 Vortex generators. These would be
Sterling, I'm sorry to do this to you. I know we're running short on time, but on the Mighty Engine, there was a report that there was an outfit in Australia that was talking about actually deploying that engine in fleet vehicles. Have you heard anything on that? Did it ever come down?
That's still percolating, as far as I know. I think they're waiting for
I'm sorry to interrupt you on that, but obviously, that would be really exciting news if we had any confirmation on that. Please, I'm sorry to have interrupted you.
Yeah, that was the Australian Department of Defense gave a major thumbs up on that technology. Moving on to MagnaCoaster, very controversial company, has been claiming to be ready to go to market for 4+ years. It's got a big, not a long shopping list of people who are on the waiting list who have paid at least half or more for their product and are waiting for it to be delivered. But supposedly he's gotten one out there and is working well, and he's working on the next batch of 9 to 10 to send out to the backlog. This is not a guy that knows how to run a business or an assembly line, so don't be holding your breath on this one. We also put up a story about oxyhydrogen from Aquatune. We did coverage on them back in 2004, and this is apparently an update about some progress they're making on fuel efficiency with their hydroxy system. And then here's a cool technology, nautical torque technology to harness tide energy via the lifting force of large vessels. Picture in your mind for a thought experiment really quick. taking a weight, lifting the weight, putting it on a pulley, and the pulley then turns a series of bicycle wheels and gears to turn a generator. And that makes total sense, right? You got gravity is the source of energy, and every half an hour or so you go and lift this weight, and it keeps your lights going in your house during a power outage. That's kind of a cool idea. Well, these guys are saying, well, rather than using a 100-kilogram weight that one guy has a hard time lifting, a couple guys can lift up pretty well, why not use one of these big cargo ships that's docked at bay that's going up and down with the tide and hook a big, huge cable to it and generate megawatts of electricity? Kind of an interesting concept. They're actually doing a fundraiser over at Indiegogo to do their first prototype. They've got some smaller prototypes that are basically along the lines of what I just said about, a small weight, turning bicycle wheels and whatnot. They want to do something much more substantial, hence the Indiegogo fundraiser. Advancement in metallurgy will fuel free energy devices. This is an article we put up in our blog. One of the principal restrictions in the free energy movement is the price of critical materials. Now technologies such as nitinol engines and neodymium magnets motors can be created cheaply for the average FE or free energy hobbyist with this new metallurgy development. It's quite fascinating. I think that story was over at Fizzorg. Of course, not talking about free energy applications. That was an extrapolation by one of our readers that we put in our blog. And then Tom Vallone over at Future Energy E-News posted his series. He does a publication once a month, kind of pulling from the news. He had 5 highlights. Recycled plastic converted to fuel was number 1. Number 2, climate change consequences. Number 3, saving money by using electric vehicles. 4, electricity data browser shows changes in fuel mix. And 5, powerful photovoltaic approaches 50% efficiency. Now, that's very significant. Usually, photovoltaic cells that you might buy for your house are in the region of 18-22% efficiency. So that they're taking the sun's energy, turning it into electricity at that rate of efficiency. You get about 1 kilowatt per meter? I may be way off on that. It's been a while since I've thought about that number of sun exposure. And so with this photovoltaic system, you could get on 1 square meter, you could get 500 watts. If my numbers are right, they could be way off. But a little development in photovoltaics. I was looking at Mother Earth News, and I should mention it's an excellent source, and they have an article in there about a do-it-yourself photovoltaic system that you can install by just basically sourcing from various places. They've got an article giving you the how-to on that. So thought I'd mention that one as well. We coming up on our music yet?
30 seconds, Sterling. And I think, Sterling, because we have so little time left, down to about 15, 16 seconds here, I understand that you are running a fundraiser at PESN.com, that the money's gotten a little bit tight and that you could use a little bit of help. Would you please give a quick announcement about your fundraising efforts before we move off?
PESN.com and chip in. Appreciate it.
Alrighty, and to my audience, thank you very much for your attendance here at the Alternative Energy Hour. Hope you'll stay tuned during the break. Charlie McGrath will be along for the second half of Wide Awake News right after these commercial announcements.